Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Shagnik. Welcome as the first viewer. Well, let's have the other viewers as well. I believe they will arrive in no time. And at the very beginning, before everyone arrives, let me beg your pardon for not attending the class last week. I had some engagements last week. Uh, and this week also I was thinking that it would not have been possible for me to take the class had there been something else which was almost about to happen, but thankfully I managed. Anyway, good evening Indrayuk, Sajid, Shumayu, Piyush, Onish, and everybody else who is arriving right now, and worship all, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening, all. I hope you are all doing well. Everyone, good evening, everybody. Debojyoti and anyone who has arrived and who will be arriving later. A warm good evening to everyone. So I think a couple of weeks ago I gave you a home task, which was probably, I think, that the mysterious possibilities that you can find in the Midnight Express. And as uh, yeah, I will be checking the tasks now. I have left them unchecked for checking it right now because from that, like the previous week, I mean a couple of weeks ago, which was actually it was based on your homework, we will roll our conversation and our discussion, which is basically a summing up of this Midnight Express. And good evening, Nobendu, and we will discuss why it is not a ghost story and it is a psychological thriller. It's a suspense thriller and everything that is happening on the psychological plane. Today we will understand why we discussed all these things like psychology, split personality and multiple personality disorders and things like that. Uh, Today we will have an end to all of this, but before all these things, let's see what you have written. Well, the first one I think is that of Borshopal, who sent it on 7th of the August. I have not checked it, I think. It was a battered old book bound in red leather. Maybe he loved to read the book. There was many books, father's library, so he took a book which was well. Um, what are these things? Okay, but uh, well, Marshall, I mean, what you have written, what is possible? The possibilities, by possibilities, what I mean that how do you think these things were possible? Last week, I mean the week before that, you have written or you had written what the improbabilities or impossibilities that was present or that should not have happened in the Midnight Express. But the last week's task was how can you ascribe some probability or possibility. I think I told the word probability, not possibility. Is it? Anyway, I don't remember, but let it be just. Now let's see what Shoujo has written. Mortimer was getting afraid of himself. Well, many years ago, I came across a book. Well, frightening. I think. Acha, I have already seen it. I think I have already seen it. Yeah. I commented that it was. Yeah, it was really a good writing. Yeah, he became nervous at the very moment. So the next page. Well, let me see it once again. Yeah, of course, some was his mind's illusion. Yeah, Of course it was illusion, of course it was illusion, but what led it to having that type of illusion, that we will discuss. Okay, but I have noticed that the flair of writing is really very good. That's why I said that it is really a very good writing. Well, thank you. Now the next one is that of Devojyoti. Well, Mortimer in the lamplight suddenly noticed okay, illumination in the place where he was reading the book, and there was a frightening illustration on the page 50 of that book. This illustration had taken a permanent place in his mind. Yes, of course. And you have written in the bracket maybe. Of course, you cannot be sure about that, so it's safer to write maybe in the bracket. In the given line, we can see that he had noticed a solitary figure on a platform. That figure. Okay, moving on. Okay, it transmitted a fear. Moreover, you could see a figure. It can also possible he might own good eyesight. Okay, that is possible, but what does it lead to? What does it lead to? কোথায় সেটা lead করে কোথায়? How can we ascribe some probability? That was actually the question. I probably you did not quite make it out what I actually intended to say. It is possible to that you have written that he stumbled out of the platform and rushed down a moonlit road. He could hear the echo of his own footsteps behind him. Now, that is something very improbable, what we had found in the last reading. But in this improbability, how can you ascribe some probability? That was the question. To find some possible things which is rather seeming to be impossible. That was the question actually. Okay. Well, okay. So what you have written, Devojyoti, is as a writing, it is all right. As a write, there is a lot of comments. Good evening, all this good evening. Can I know the question one more time? Onik is asking, I think the question was basically, Onik, that I do not remember exactly, I had put it last day, but in some way it was like, why do you try to ascribe some probabilities in the otherwise improbable happening that is happening in Midnight Express? Okay, so well, let us discuss now. Let us understand what is happening, especially in the first unit. There is nothing improbable. It is just the little Mortimer getting. It is just the first unit is describing how little Mortimer is getting afraid. Owing to that red book bound in red leather, the torn, battered book. And I told you that it came to him, or he suddenly stumbled across the book in such an atmosphere, in a gothic house, and the sea roaring outside, the grandfather clock ticking, and the total atmosphere or the ambience, it somehow went into the provocation of the fear in the mind of Mortimer. Well, and that was very firmly installed in his mind. So that many of you have written. So that was the cause of the fear. But the later happenings, what is happening from the second unit and to the third unit, especially, those are very improbable. Those are very improbable. That, well, out of my fear, I may imagine somebody's face to be mine because I do not know the face. But how can I hear my own footsteps chasing behind me? How can a man, I asked you last day, how can a man who is completely a stranger, who does not know the person coming from outside, without asking any question, how can he let him enter the house without asking any question, which is not at all probable? And then he takes him to the upstairs, and somebody comes, a shadowy figure, and that also happens to be having his own face. And what is not written in this book, that he comes, Mortimer jumps, he tries to put an end or put a full stop to his fear, and he goes and tries to strangle that person, and eventually, as he was strangling that person, he himself was getting choked and eventually died. So how can you explain all these eerie or supernatural activities? It cannot be normal. It cannot be normal. But I told you that in the very beginning that this thing can be psychologically explained, and it is not supernatural as it seems to be. Well, then let us discuss what is happening, যে আমরা যদি এরকম ভাবে ধরে নিই এটা হতে পারে কিনা। No, it's still not clear, because I have not even given you the explanation. Explanation means what I think. So please do not thank me now. After my explanation, you may not be so thankful. Maybe. So only thank me after I explain everything. So, well, I do not mean to negate your thank, but well, let me explain. Well, this book is very much torn. So what is happening, especially in the third unit? Well, in the second unit, that a wave of panic surged through Mortimer. I am reading in page 101, from the last paragraph of page 101. A wave of panic surged through Mortimer. He turned, gasped, and broke into a wild run. He stumbled out of the platform and rushed down a moonlit road. He could hear the echo of his own footsteps behind him. So the first thing is, he can hear his footsteps, but he cannot hear his footsteps behind him. But the road was lonely. Everything in the atmosphere was silent. And as he was running, he was hearing his footsteps. But as Shaurya has written, that he had some hallucinations or illusion or delusional mind. So he somehow out of his, and he also very fear stricken, প্রচন্ড ভয়ও পেয়েছিল। এই সমস্ত কিছুর মধ্যে দিয়ে সেটা যেটা হচ্ছে যে maybe he is mistaking his own footsteps to be his chasers or his followers' footsteps. He is not in a condition to differentiate, or he is not in a condition to logically or rationally think, or put or to provide some rationality or logic in his thinking, because he is too much biased, he is too much afraid, he is too much taken up by fear. So that's why he has completely lost it. He has completely lost his mind, his rational thinking, and that's why he is mistakenly perceiving his own footsteps to be his chasers or followers' footsteps. Number one. Then what is happening? The footsteps were gaining on him. মানে তার কাছাকাছি চলে আসে, of course কাছাকাছি আসবে, because it is his own footsteps. Didn't I check it on everyone? Well, I will, but let me explain it first, because I'm in the go of it. So Mortimer paused for a moment. Of course, if you pause and if you are hearing your own footsteps, that will also pause, and that will evoke your suspicion to be even more. So he was completely shaken with fear. He began to run again, and he was hearing the steps again, as it should. And then quarter of a mile down, Mortimer saw a white cottage seeking desperate shelter. Mortimer pounded on the wooden door. He heard heavy footsteps coming down the creaking stairs. The door opened, and a shadowy figure stood with a candle. Now, this is the most mysterious part. Which house did he go? Which house, from which house did he find the creaking stairs, the person coming down and opening the gate and let him enter? This is the most confounding, confusing, and mysterious part. But who is that person? And if the person was outside, how can he go inside? The only explainable thing is that he's a ghost, but we have said it previously that that it is not a ghost story. Now consider this. Consider this. If you are panic stricken or whatever stricken it is, in your town or in your village, which is your most recognized route? Which is your most recognized route from anywhere in your town? Let me hear it from you. What is the most recognized route that you have in your town or in your village or whatever city? Type it here. Which address you will not forget? By address, I am not mentioning the written address, but the route to that place, which you would never forget. What do you say? Let's find out. Tell me, what do you think? Yeah, of course. No, Shumay, I'm not asking about any address. Yeah, what Onik has said, that is the the answers are various. Let's see what anybody else says. Onik has said my home. Shumayo has said Arentego Road. Well, Arentego Road are there in so many places, so many cities. I don't think you know each and every Arentego Road, Shumayo. And Nobendu is saying the way of my school. Okay. And Devojyoti says Golapoti to post office. Okay. Near river. Okay. Acha. Singdorjar Moat to Choto College Field. Okay. The way of my school. Well, now what I ask you, don't be personal. Don't be personal. Don't be stuck in your town. Imagine that it is any town and imagine yourself to be everybody. Now, what is the address or what is the place that a person does not forget in his life? When I say you, don't think about yourself. Think about a person, any person. I'm coming to it. You say it again. There are variegated answers. Jyoti, I want you to be even narrower. Well, let us not waste time on it. What Indrayud has said, and of course what Onik has said at the very beginning, that of course it is the route to your home. Of course, that is যে রাস্তা দেবজ্যোতি বলছো যে রাস্তাতে বেশি যাওয়া আসা আছে, তোমার বাড়ি ছাড়া এমন কোন জায়গা আছে যার থেকে বেশি যাওয়া আসা তোমার আছে অন্য কোন জায়গাতে? Is there any place other than your home where you go more often than not from your home or to your home? যদি হোমের আগে টু বসে না, but anyway, I don't think so. It may be from station, it may be from school, it may be from bus stand, it may be from your friend's house. Wherever you go, the place you always return to is your home. And from your home you go everywhere, and from everywhere you come to your home. That is the place. It is somehow been installed in your blood, the root of it. You would never forget for your lifetime. And that the same thing is happening, I believe, with Mortimer. But Mortimer, without being understanding, without our, of course, yeah, of course, Devajit. So if you think now, coming from this deduction, if we place this to what is happening with Mortimer, don't you think that when you are running in panic and without any thought in your head, as a blockhead, in a blank way, you are running with stumbling and you are thinking somebody is chasing, the place where you will go automatically is your home. And I believe it is not written anywhere, it is my perception, I perceive it in this way, that Mortimer had gone nowhere but to his home, to his house, but he could not understand that it was his house. And if you believe, if you think, consider that it was his own house, then you may understand that the next events are very easily explainable. If you go to any other house and you knock on it and somebody opens the door, the first question he would ask you, who are you, what do you need, whatever. But the only place where you will not be asked a question is your home, because everybody knows you. I mean, your mother or your father or your brother or whoever who lives in your home is not supposed to ask you, who are you, what do you want, because you are a member. What happens? He or she opens the door and he goes away and you get in. As simple as that. And the same thing happens with Mortimer, but Mortimer, out of his fear, cannot understand that it is his own home, and that's why he is vacant. But later on, when he is trying to put things in a chain, the strange cycle of events, as it is said in unit 3, he still can't understand that this can very well happen because it is his own home. না সুমাইও, এটা কি করে বললে তুমি? যেখানে মর্টিমার গিয়েছিল সেখানে কেউ ছিল না, তাহলে দরজাটা কে খুলে দিল? There was a figure, there was some creaking footsteps from the stairs. He opened the door. Why Mortimer cannot understand that it was his own house? Nabindu, because he was panicked. Strange things can happen out of fear, and you have to believe that Mortimer was afraid of something which he was terribly afraid of, or which he had been terribly afraid of from his childhood. It was not only a fear, it was basically a phobia. No, somebody opened the door. Somebody opened the door. See, the door opened and a shadowy figure stood with a candle. See, they went up with the creaking stairs. So these things happened. So this is how I explain it. It was open. Where is it said that it was opened? Quarter of a mile down, Mortimer saw a small white cottage seeking desperate shelter. Mortimer pounded on the wooden door. He heard heavy footsteps coming down the creaking stairs. The door opened. It's clearly written, Shumayu. The door opened. It was not open previously. Clearly written. As you have written, it was opened. No, it was not opened. The door opened. Okay. And it is clearly written, Mortimer pounded on the wooden door. He pounded. Had it been open, he would not have to pound on it. And had he pounded on an open door, it would have opened. He would not have to wait for that shadowy figure to come down the creaking stairs. Okay. And Indrayud is saying, sir, was the strange man with the candlelight, was his later born later born some sin brother? I don't think so. It's not quite natural. It's not quite natural. কোনো মানুষই খুলেছিল কোনো না কোনো, of course there was a figure, of course what you are saying. I think the same that the White of course it was his own house. দেখো, I cannot say with 100% conviction, আমি 100% কনভিকশন নিয়ে তো বলতে পারি না যে সে ওর বাড়িতেই গেছিল, বাট অ্যাজ দ্য ইভেন্টস আনফোল্ড it somehow dawns upon me that এটা ছাড়া আর কি বা হতে পারে, আর একটা জিনিসই হতে পারে যে তাহলে ভূত ছিল। ওয়েল, এই দুটো ছাড়া তার আমি কোনো মিনিং খুঁজে পাই না। And we are trying to come away from making it a ghost story or trying to ascribe some meaning in it. So this is the only logical explanation that I can find. Okay, so that's why that shadowy figure beckoned him inside. Come on in, he said, maybe, or without anything beckoned. It can be a gesture as well. So they went up the creaking stairs. Well, and what is Sharnik saying? I think the same that, yeah, maybe it was his own house, what I am saying. And of course then, I mean, তারপরের ইভেন্ট গুলোতে তো আরো পরিষ্কার হয়ে যাচ্ছে না, what you are finding in unit 3, that the same book he is founding he is finding the same book written on it, the Midnight Express, and the same battered old book bound in red leather, exactly the same one. Where else are you supposed to find it except where it was from the very beginning? That makes it even more what should I say, that makes it even more proven that it was his own house, where he came without understanding, and he finds that he found that very book. Well, but because he cannot find any meaning, because he was in great fear, and because he is psychologically split হয়ে যাচ্ছে সে, ঠিক আছে, because this is his mind, I mean the logical mind, and this is the mind which is afraid. Now when this mind is active, this mind cannot intrude, because now this mind is more powerful psychologically. It has completely taken over this mind, and that's why things are happening like this. Okay. Mortimer was greatly afraid. He turned to the trembling hands, Jayok, and then what is happening? Mortimer tries to grasp the strange cycle of events he was going through. He was filled with acute dread. Who is the strange man who asked me into his cottage? Mortimer asked himself fearfully. At that very moment, the door opened and the strange host came in. And I think from here, Mortimer reached, or Mortimer's mind reached the height of that disease or disorder, whatever you call it, and he begins to hallucinate. If you have seen movies like I told you last day, maybe Breathe into Shadows, or a Bengali movie called Jatishwar হয়তো দেখেছো তোমরা, জাতিস্বর দেখেছো কি? প্রসেনজিতের, যিশু সেনগুপ্ত আছে, and that beautiful song of Kabir Suman is there, that কি গানটার কথাগুলো ভুলে গেলাম। Well, I think you have seen it, Jatishwar. The man who opened the door was his logical mind. I don't think so. না, আমি তো বলছি সেটা দেবজ্যোতি, যেটা তো কোনো গোস্ট স্টোরি নয়, if you interpret it in this way, because যেটা বলছে শার্নিক বলছো যে, so the man who opened the door, it was his logical mind. Now, well, I don't think so, because যদি logical mind হতো, then there would have been a conflict between the two. দুটোর মধ্যে একটা কনফ্লিক্ট। লজিক্যাল মাইন্ড would try to take over his irrational mind, but that is not happening. Had there been any intrusion of the logical mind, he would try to clearly at least explain. Maybe the last time the logical mind played some part, that was that he tried to grasp the strange cycle of events, but again it died down, it subdued to the more powerful other personality that was present in Mortimer. And he tried, basically he was basically strangling himself. He was basically strangling himself, নিজেকেই নিজে কোনো রকম ভাবে he was basically committing suicide, but himself not understanding. He was somehow hallucinating that he is choking, he is strangling the throat of that other person, but actually he was basically strangling his throat. But maybe not like this, maybe he was hanging or whatever it is, we don't know, or we may never know as this was written. But things happen like this. Well, things happen like this. Hey, tumi kemon tumi, exactly, that was the song. Thank you for reminding. In this respect, I would like to make mention of a quotation by Shakespeare in his very famous play Hamlet. In Hamlet, in the first act, first scene, Hamlet is the prince of Denmark and his father is the king. Basically his father was the king. He died, basically he was murdered. He died for the whole kingdom, he died. But the play opens that Hamlet is chatting with his bosom friend Horatio, and at that moment something supernatural happens, and the ghost of Hamlet, the king, appears, and he tells Hamlet that, Hamlet, please be aware of the fact that your father was not naturally dead. He had been murdered by none other than your own very uncle. And that was a kind of knowledge to confer to Hamlet, and then the ghost disappeared. And this somehow made Hamlet very suspicious, that what to do now. Should I go and charge my uncle, and should I not? And what just happened, can I believe it to be true, because that was just an apparition, and we know that in clear daylight or things like this cannot happen. But somehow he wants to believe the ghost, and he wants to prove it in this way or that. Later on that happens in the play later on. But after that, Horatio, his friend, he makes some suspicious comment, or he makes some, he looks askance at it, সন্দেহ করছে, is it possible things like this? Well, সেই মুহূর্তে yeah, exactly, Indrayud, you are spot on, exactly. But I would like to say you something, that first of all, quotation, you have erred in the spelling quotation. It is not Quotation, it's Quotation. It's Quotation, quotation, number one. And number two, of course, you are very right by saying that, you are very spot on, you have nailed it, that there are so many things. Well, the quotation is, the Hamlet is saying Horatio that there are so many things on heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Well, let me write it for you. There are more things, not so many things, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt in your philosophy. That's it. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Sorry. Let me write it once again. Um, yeah. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. মানে তুমি ভাবতে পারো না, তোমার মাথাতেই আসে না, এমন তোমার ইমাজিনেশনেও আসে না, এমন সমস্ত জিনিসের বাইরেও আরো অনেক কিছু হয় সাধারণ বুদ্ধির বাইরেও, which is not logically explainable. ওকে, তো সেই রকম কিছুই আমাদের এই গল্পটাতে হচ্ছে, বাট ইট ইজ নট beyond science. Maybe it's not beyond science, but of course it is beyond the natural grasp of normal day-to-day life events, and not many of us are psychologically split. Horatio is his friend, the name of the friend of Hamlet. So that is it. That's why I say that it is a psychological thriller. And now you tell me how you liked it. I mean, this new perspective, this completely new perspective, what I would call that summing up of this text, that you have read it, we have read it, but we had never tried to imagine things from this perspective, that can also happen. So what is the meaning of dreamt of in your philosophy? Dreamt of in your philosophy, it simply means that you can even dream of. Philosophy means here it is your complete sphere, the complete sphere where your mind roams about. That is it. That's what Macbeth wants to describe as philosophy. Okay, simple as that. Okay, so I think, I mean, am I clear? Am I clear? Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Devajyoti. So that's why I told you that this is a text which I like very much in our syllabus. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed this text thoroughly, and tell me what other texts you are I mean is left to discuss. What other text is there which is left to discuss? Everyone sang of Siegfried Sassoon, is it done? And the man who planted trees, I think that is the last text that you have. Yeah, thank you everyone. So tell me, what should I take up next day? Is somebody teaching that everyone sang? Summer friends এখনো হয়নি. Well, everyone sang. আচ্ছা, everyone sang-টা কি তোমাদের বইয়ে আছে? এটা বলো তো। I mean, I believe there are two versions of this book. Do you have Everyone Sang, a poem called Everyone Sang in your book? In lesson number 12, what you have in lesson number 12? Yeah, yes, this is an old version of book that I am having. You see, in lesson number 12, in lesson number 12, on page 110, you have a poem, Everyone Sang, of Siegfried Sassoon in your book, which was the previous version, but it is not now. It is not here. Okay, so what you have? You have someone of someone written by, I think, Walter Delamere, isn't it? Yeah, Walter Delamere. Yes. Is it been taken up by someone? কোনো স্যার পড়াচ্ছেন এটা? Someone? If no, then we may take up this poem. Because after reading this text, which had an element of supernatural in it, that is extra. Okay, I think that someone will be a good poem to begin after this one, because Walter Delamere is a kind of poet who somehow specializes in writing supernatural poems or creating a supernatural eerie atmosphere. Okay, so I think next day we will start, or we will discuss that the poem Someone. Okay, just before next day's class or this session on YouTube, please remind me in WhatsApp that, sir, that is the thing that we are going to read, because as it is not there in this book, I may forget that exactly, Devajyoti. We will discuss that is actually the characteristic feature of all Walter Delamere poems. He tries to create an ambience of supernatural. So I think that will be a good leap from a supernatural text to another text containing supernatural elements. Okay, so I think we should stop here, and well, we may have some. Actually, I am watching web series and things like that, and I'm not burning midnight oil. বেশি রাত জাগছি না, সেই জন্য খেলাও দেখা হচ্ছে না সেরকম ভাবে, and I have not recharged my D2H. I have not recharged my D2H, and that's why I am watching everything on web. So last thing I watched was Arya in Hotstar, that Sushmita Sen starrer, Arya. That was also a very engrossing one. So that would have been very engrossing as well. আর দেখা হয় না রে, কি করব, ফুটবল অনেকদিন দেখা হয় না 16 dribbles, oh my god. আচ্ছা, who is there with Barcelona? বার্সেলোনার সাথে কে আছে, কার সাথে আসবে? I don't like Neymar that much. See, he may be a good player, but I don't think he's a legend. Sorry, I beg to differ with you, but I don't think he's a legend. Ronaldo may be a legend, Messi may be a legend, even I mean Xavi, Iniesta, they may be legend, but I don't think Neymar, he has the quality of being a legend. He's a very good footballer, maybe, but not every footballer or not every good footballer is a legend. Uh, yeah, I think so. I think so, Devojyoti. Well, so that's why I would like to part with you before this quarrel starts with a home task. So let me just drop in the home task and leave from this quarrel which I may have caused in this. Yeah, I like Messi very much, Humayun, and that doesn't mean I do not like Ronaldo. I like him as well. Uh, Acha, do the activity 10B. Write an imaginary conversation between you and your friend discussing the advantages of visiting a library regularly. You have to take in mind the modern things as well. ঠিক আছে, লাইব্রেরিতে যাওয়া আগেকার দিনে that was a very very useful thing, and that is also useful nowadays, but you also have to take into account what are the alternatives of library that we have nowadays. Okay, I'm not telling you that. I like you to see what you think. I would like you to come up with some mature thoughtful writings, paragraph, not quite long, but whatever you write with right conflict. Since it is a conversation, it should be strong enough. Okay, let's not like let's come on, let's discuss about the usefulness of library or visiting a library, not like that. A conversation becomes better when you present a conflict in it. এর মধ্যে যদি একটা conflict রাখো, then it becomes better. Conflict থাকলে খুব ভালো হয় যে কি বলবো, it's like it's more like একজন একরকম ভাবছে আর একজন আরেক রকম ভাবছে. You have a clash of ideas, and the moment you have a clash of ideas, that rolls on very well and that reads very well as well by the reader. So I think I would see that in your homework, how you write, and then we will evaluate. Well, so let's call it a day, and you quarrel with your Messi and Ronaldo. Indrayud, I am seeing that he is showing thumbs down to Messi, but well, you just can't. Indomitable. Well, thank you very much. Good night. See you next week.